So far our test is looking pretty good. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and actually submit the form and make sure the correct event is emitted. What this means we need to do is trigger this submit event, and it's going to call a submit method which doesn't exist. So let's go ahead and create a submit method. And for now, I'm just going to do a console log to make sure this is working. And this is going to illustrate a very subtle bug and something you need to be aware of. Let's save this off and update our test to submit this form. So the first thing we're going to do is click on that button. We've seen how we can use fire event, and we're going to use click, and we're just going to go ahead and click on that button. And you might expect the console log to be triggered here. Let's save it off and see what happens. You can see here, although we're triggering this event, we're actually not getting the console log like you might expect. Let's go ahead and see why this is happening. I'm going to jump down here and do a log and just say 28 for line 28, and I'm going to do another log inside of here for line 25. If we save this off, we're going to see something a little bit surprising. We have 25, then we have 28, and then we have 25 again. What's happening here is we're waiting for the next tick to ensure that the button has been updated correctly, and at this point it hasn't been updated correctly. Then we're executing the fire event, and because the button is still disabled, it's not going to be submitted. Then on the next execution of the callback inside of wait for, this assertion is going to pass. We're logging 25 again, but at this point we've already done our fire event, so we're not going to get the console log like you might expect. It's a little bit surprising, and it's kind of a subtle bug you need to be aware of, and we're going to see a better way to write this test to avoid this bug. Just to illustrate this, what I'm going to do is delete both of these, and we're going to use await here. And this is going to await for this to have finished before we fire the event. And if we go ahead and save this one off, we can see this is now working correctly. We're going to wait for this successfully to pass the assertion, and then we're going to proceed to the next part of the execution here. And this is going to work just fine. And you can see we're getting the console log here. There is perhaps a better way to do this. What we could do is await for the fire event up here. And by doing this, we can actually get rid of our wait for down here. And this hopefully is going to give us the same result. You can see here we're still getting these dots. It is good to be aware of both the ways you can do it, using wait for, using await, wait for, and just using await fire event. I think both will come in handy depending on your tests. Anyway, for now I am going to leave it like this. Let's go ahead now and actually emit the correct event and make sure that is working correctly. What I'm going to do is jump in here and just do the classic this.emit. I'm just going to call it submit for now, and we're going to have a payload which is going to be the name, which is just going to be the name that the user has correctly filled out. Let's head back to our test now and assert that that event is correctly emitted. What we can do is come and destructure this object in here, and this has an emitted property, and that's going to give us all the emitted events. If you've used Vue Test Utils before, you will recognize this. It's exactly the same. Let's just go and console log it to illustrate what is going on here. So this should give us a list of all the events that have been emitted from the component. And in this case, it is going to give us actually a function, which we need to call. Let's go ahead and call that one. And that should then give us a correct list of all the events. And sure enough, we are going to get our emitted object. It has a single submit event with a single payload. Let's go ahead and take a look at that one now. And if everything is working correctly, we're going to get an array. Apparently we're getting an error here. I'm just going to TS ignore this one for now, and we're going to come back and deal with that later. But you can see I am getting the correct payload here. So let's go ahead and write our assertion. So I'm going to jump in here, grab this one, and just write an assertion against the correct payload here. So we can see we're getting one event. I'm going to grab the first event, the first argument, and that should be equal to my name, which is Lachlan. So I'm going to say to equal, pass in name here, and that should just be equal to Lachlan. And if I've done everything correctly here, this should pass. I'm going to move my TS ignore inside of here, save this one off, and it looks like I've made a mistake somewhere along the line. Let me try and find that one out really quickly. Let's just delete this one. I don't think I need that. If I save this one off now, hopefully it's going to pass, and so it does. Obviously we have this error here because we haven't got the correct typing on emit, and that's why it doesn't think the submit property exists. I'm going to look into this bug in the meantime, but for now I'm just going to use TS ignore to write my assertion.